Good morning and welcome to another unusual episode of The Angry Astronaut. Before I start getting to the whole alien topic, I need to give you guys an apology. The last video that I did release, I admit, had a clickbaity sort of title, and in my opinion, that probably resulted in a number of you unsubbing because the growth of my channel came to a screeching halt. However, the whole point of having a clickbaity title was because I was trying to get the word out there about content that is also clickbaity and completely misleading and actually, I think, damaging in general in terms of the misinformation that it's putting out about space science, about what SpaceX and Elon Musk are actually doing, that sort of thing. So much of that stuff out there. And the last video that I released about that topic didn't have a clickbaity title and was watched by nobody. So as a result, I decided to get a little bit more aggressive, and it may have turned some people off. So for what it's worth, I do apologize. I value everybody who's been subscribing as of late, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please, I'm just over 4,000 away from getting there now, heading down the final home stretch. Please subscribe. Okay, now, as far as the title of this video is concerned, I had given up on the idea of Tabby star possibly being an example or, potential example of an alien megastructure or something along those lines because of the various explanations that had come out regarding Tabby star. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Tabby star, it is a star that is not too far away from our own solar system that experienced a strange dimming that was inconsistent with a planetary body or anything else that might cause this kind of dimming. I'm going to get into some of the details of that here in a moment, but it was later determined that it was more than likely some sort of dust, perhaps being caused by the breakup of an exomoon. That's the most recent explanation. It seemed logical to me. It seemed like a good explanation, and there were other better examples of star systems that we have observed that might fit with the alien megastructure scenario. However, a lot has developed since that time, since that explanation came out, that has thrown all of this into question. And all of this actually came out some time ago, about a year and a half ago, and yet it really hasn't hit the news wires at all. And I find that both frustrating and it also makes me angry. So I'm going to give you that new information and what makes Tabby star such a fascinating stellar system. We're going to talk about all of that in just a moment. Our story begins not with Tabby star, but instead with a more recently discovered stellar system called TIC 400799224. And yeah, if you're going to research this kind of stuff, you got to start getting used to these ridiculously long numbers. This is a strange variable object that also experiences dips in brightness inconsistent with planets passing in front of them. Instead, it appears to be the kind of dimming that one would expect from some sort of gas cloud. This in itself is not that unusual. However, what is unusual is the fact that the dimming is highly variable. Sometimes it drops down as much as 25%, and sometimes it doesn't drop at all when they were expecting to have some kind of dimming, indicating that whatever is orbiting the star abruptly vanishes, or sometimes simply becomes more diffuse and blocks less light. And all of this happens under very, very swift conditions. In the space of just a few months, you can have a complete change in the amount of light that's being blocked by whatever is orbiting this strange binary system. The only explanation that makes any sense is that there is some sort of asteroid collision happening on a very regular basis in orbit around this star system. Very large objects, or perhaps one large object being hit by smaller objects, creates a new dust cloud, which is then blown away by the stellar wind. Now, this is a very, very unusual situation, but nevertheless something that could theoretically happen. However, this would mean that on a regular basis, some sort of collision or multiple collisions would have to be creating about 3 million metric tons worth of new dust every single year. If one dismantled the asteroid Ceres, for example, which is 500 kilometers in radius, at that rate, it would last for 8,000 years. In other words, you would dismantle the entire asteroid, and by the way, that's more of a small planet than an asteroid, and then it would be gone and you would have no more dust left available, which means we are very lucky to be seeing this sort of thing happening at this particular moment, given that it wouldn't last terribly long. However, on some occasions, these collisions obviously are not occurring, because sometimes the star is not dimmed at all. Now, there are other possibilities. What if something was artificially creating all of this dust? Some sort of mining operation, for example. It would make a great deal of sense for an alien civilization to exploit the asteroids of a given star system for its raw materials, and they could be doing this at a very rapid pace, and the leftover debris, tailings if you will, is what we are observing in orbit around this star system. And on occasion, the mining operation gets shut down, or sometimes it increases in its intensity, and so that's why we see a variable amount of dust being created before it gets blown away by the stellar winds. However, I acknowledge that it's most probably a natural explanation of some kind, most likely the collision scenario that's being presented, as unlikely as it may seem for collisions of something this enormous to be occurring this frequently. Nevertheless, certainly not the best candidate for an alien megastructure or anything along those lines. And this is what brings us back to Tabby star. This entire explanation of this particular star makes the previous explanation for Tabby star, that is the natural explanation, a whole lot less likely. So let me talk about Tabby star real quick, or Boyajian star as it's usually called, named after the scientist who discovered it. First of all, this is a main sequence star, an F-class star, not too unlike our own, about 1,500 light years away from our planet. The thing that makes this star so interesting, like many other star systems, is the fact that it dims in a very irregular pattern. In other words, inconsistent with any sort of planetary body or any traditional astrophysical phenomena blocking out the star's light. Now, the explanation that's been put forward up to this point that is generally accepted is that an exomoon is getting ripped apart by some sort of phenomena in the star, perhaps the star's gravitational field, perhaps some sort of collision, and it's creating a massive dust cloud that changes with every orbit. And as a result, we see a variable amount of dimming. However, here's the big kicker with that explanation, or rather, there are two problems with it. Number one, whatever is blocking the star's light does not radiate energy in the infrared, which is completely inconsistent with any sort of dust or other types of debris that would be created by an exomoon or any other body being torn apart. And here's the second problem. If some sort of object is being torn apart and creating a variable amount of dust, that dust should then be promptly blown away by the star's stellar wind, especially considering the distance that the object is orbiting the star, only about 4 astronomical units, which, by the way, falls within the star's Goldilocks zone by interesting coincidence. So if this colossal amount of dust orbiting Tabby star, that doesn't behave like dust, by the way, is the same sort of thing that's occurring with TIC 400799224, that is to say some sort of collision or other cataclysm ripping a large planetary body apart, then that dust should be blown away and would have to be replaced on a regular basis, actually on an ongoing basis, by a colossal amount of debris, trillions and trillions of tons of it, which for some reason doesn't radiate energy in the infrared like that sort of debris should, especially that close to the star. And that's not the only unusual thing about this strange dust-emitting object, or whatever we want to call it, that's orbiting Tabby star. In addition to that, on occasion, it has taken up very strange shapes. On one occasion, the shape of an isosceles triangle. An amazing coincidence. Now, of course, there are comets that sometimes appear that way as well, but this would have to be more of a reverse comet, because the pattern of the debris field was not consistent with a comet orbiting the star or anything similar to a comet. So even the shape of the debris cloud has been very strange in the time that we've been observing it. And once again, strange geometric shapes orbiting stars are the kind of thing that many scientists regard as being consistent with techno-signatures. It would be nice if it was a more obvious geometric shape, but given that we can't really expect megastructures to be designed specifically to send messages, we can only expect alien civilizations to bend over backwards for us so far. Okay, so all of that having been said, what else is there that makes Tabby star unusual? Well, after more examination, it seems that this star has been steadily and consistently dimming for at least the last 100 years by about 20% or so, which is something very typical for a number of stars. Stars tend to dim all the time, but not F-type main sequence stars. This would be completely unprecedented. We have never seen a consistent and steady dimming of a star by this magnitude over this long of a period of time. Once again, if there is some sort of activity going on in this star system, it's been increasing over the past several decades. Is that consistent with an object being ripped apart? Well, if so, this is a phenomena without precedent. We're talking about a colossal object producing a colossal amount of dust, trillions and trillions of tons of it, on an ongoing basis for nearly a century, and also an increasing amount of dust, steadily increasing. All of these things perhaps pointing to a natural cause, but with each passing year, there are more and more holes being punched through every theory. But of course, this applies to an intelligent explanation as well, because any sort of alien megastructure, a Dyson sphere, a Dyson swarm, at least the kind of technology that we understand that a civilization would place in orbit around their star, shouldn't behave like this either. Because even though whatever this stuff is not giving off energy in the infrared, it's also not blocking out all the light, or even the majority of the light. Instead, it suggests some kind of substance with roughly the same consistency as smoke. A Dyson sphere or even a Dyson swarm made out of smoke doesn't make much sense, but there is another explanation, and I'm going to venture into the realm of science fiction here, a place that no astrophysicist or astronomer is going to dare to go. What if it is a cloud of some kind of alien nanomachines? Tiny robots the size of smoke particles that absorb all the energy that strike them in order to power the machines in the first place. Something that would explain why they don't radiate any energy in the infrared and why they appear to be so cold, even though they're orbiting close enough to the star to where they shouldn't be that cold. I'm imagining a vast machine civilization not connected connected physically, but connected through some sort of signals, either maybe lasers, radio frequency, something along those lines, allowing all of the nanomachines to work together as a single organism, absorbing the energy from the star. Not all of it, obviously. It wouldn't need that much, but enough in order to power the entire structure or the entire civilization, or perhaps a single hive mind consisting of trillions of nanomachines. And why would their number be increasing, steadily causing Boyajian star to dim further over the decades? Well, that's because it's slowly converting all of the available mass in the solar system into duplicates of itself, allowing the civilization or the organism to steadily grow and survive, and perhaps even to migrate to another solar system and set about doing the same thing there. Something like that strikes me as being a bit terrifying, but at the same time, it fits with the description of what we're seeing right now. A vast number of smoke-like particles which don't emit any infrared radiation, shifting in size and configuration and increasing in number over the course of the last 100 years. And there's one more thing about Boyajian star that strikes me as being very odd indeed and begins to look extremely artificial, and that's the periodicity of the light curve drops that we have observed up to this point. After years of observation, the team observing Boyajian star has determined that there is a periodicity of 24.2 days between drops in light curves. 24.2 days separating changes, that is, in the dips in brightness of the star. And interestingly enough, if you multiply 24.2 by 65, you come up with a total of 1,573 days, which is exactly the amount of time it takes this object to orbit Boyajian star. Let me say that again. The pattern of the light dips come in multiples of 24.2 days, consistently over and over again, and 65 times 24.2 is, by crazy coincidence, the number of days it takes this object to orbit the star. That is not only spooky, it starts to look really artificial. Now, there are other natural explanations that have been postulated, but all of them have fallen short up to this point. There are, for example, some ideas about a swarm of cold comets, which wouldn't radiate energy in the infrared. However, the number of comets that would be needed in order to generate the light curves that we've observed up to this point seem to defy all description. Far more comets than we've seen in any other planetary system by far, and also it doesn't really explain why the amount of debris would increase or vary by such an enormous amount. But here's what I find to be the most frustrating thing about Tabby star. If you look this up online, you're going to find a myriad of articles that claim that dust explains everything about this phenomena, and it just doesn't. Dust radiates energy in the infrared, especially dust orbiting this close to the star. And this debris, or whatever this stuff is not generating any energy in the infrared, meaning that it cannot be dust. And yet that is what article after article after article continues to claim. Is if you believe everything that you see in the media these days about Tabby star, you would think that this has been a case closed situation for a long time. Indeed, even I thought that for a while, but it's just not the case. If you want the straight story about what's going on with Boyajian star and other strange astronomical phenomena throughout the cosmos, you should check out John Michael Godier's YouTube channel. He may be a science fiction writer, but he's also one of the most responsible people I follow that cover these kinds of phenomena throughout the cosmos. He also put forward the theory that this could be the byproduct of some sort of vast alien mining operation, although he said that that sort of thing would also create a great deal of infrared radiation, which means that he actually changed his explanation to a stellar mining operation at Tabby Star rather than an asteroid mining operation. Instead of explaining that in detail, I'm going to let you check out his video, and it's linked here in the description. But regardless of what Tabby Star may be, it is a mystery that is far from being resolved. And if this phenomena is the product of an alien civilization, this is what they were doing at roughly the time that the Western Roman Empire fell, a very long time ago, and who knows what they've managed to accomplish in the 1500 years that have passed since then. And also, at this point, they would have observed our planet, and depending on the sensitivity of their instruments, they could also know that there was a primitive civilization beginning to develop there, and by now, we might actually be technologically sophisticated enough to be able to observe them. Might they have guessed this? Is this why they're putting isosceles triangle-shaped objects orbiting their star for us to observe? Is this why they're creating such a strange mathematical coincidence in the periodicity of their light curves that we can observe right now? Well, many things are possible, and I have to admit, I find it to be just as disturbing as I find it exciting. Smash that like, hit that subscribe, please check the description for various ways to support my content, and also please hit that notification bell. And until we find that one smoking gun in our cosmos that undeniably confirms the existence of alien civilizations and alien techno-signatures and changes everything about how we observe other phenomena throughout our cosmos, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.